What's going on, guys? Mega Gig back with another video, back with another build guide in Diablo 3, and we're taking a look at the Jade Harvester Witch Doctor build today. Probably one of my favorite, if not my favorite, Witch Doctor builds. It's very, very fun. It's very unique, and it can be challenging to really master this build, but it's fairly easy to get good or decent with it. So without further ado, let's get in. You're going to need the Jade Harvesters, the Raiment of the Jade Harvester set, all 6 pieces. The 2-piece set bonus: when Haunt lands on an enemy already affected by Haunt, it instantly deals 560 seconds worth of Haunt damage. So that is a big amount of damage all at once. 4-piece set bonus: Soul Harvest gains the effect of every rune, which is also very helpful, and its cooldown is reduced by 1 second every time you cast Haunt or Locust Swarm. And our biggest damage dealer is actually going to be Soul Harvest from the 6-piece set bonus here, so that is super effective and super helpful, having Soul Harvest cooldown be reduced every time. Now we're going to be spamming Haunt. We're not going to be casting Locust Swarm a ton, but that extra second every now and then does help. And the 6-piece set bonus: Soul Harvest reduces damage taken by 50%. That's new from the previous patch. So some toughness going into this build now, which is really nice. Soul Harvest reduces your damage taken by 50% for 12 seconds and consumes your damage over time effects on enemies, instantly dealing 650 seconds worth of remaining damage. And that is huge, guys. And that time has been buffed up. I don't actually remember what the old time was, but that is a lot of damage all at once. It's a lot of explosive, just in-your-face pop damage, and then we're getting resets on Soul Harvest. From our Grave Injustice passive, which we'll go over the skills in a minute, and yeah, so we're able to do a lot of damage really fast. On to the weapon. We are using the Sacred Harvester. This allows Soul Harvest to stack up to 10 times. Very important, guys, because we're also wearing Lakuma's Ornament, which reduces all damage taken by 6% for each Soul Harvest stack you have. And we're going to have 10, so that is 60% reduced damage. For our offhand, we are using the Vile Hive. Locust Swarm gains the effect of the Pestilence rune and deals 60% increased damage. The second part of that's not really that important, but the Pestilence rune is very nice to have. Locust Swarm has a 100% chance to jump to 2 additional enemies, so you cast it once, it spreads all around the screen. It's very nice. For our belt, we are using the Haunting Girdle. There are a couple other different belts some people like to use. I really prefer the Haunting Girdle in this, because the Pestilence rune, for instance, allows Locust Swarm to spread all over the screen, and we are consuming with Soul Harvest, we're consuming all of our damage over time spells, so we want everything to be affected by Locust Swarm and Haunt as much as we can. We've covered it with Locust Swarm here with the Pestilence rune. Now with Haunt, we don't want to just be casting 1 at a time. That's going to take forever. So I'm using the Haunting Girdle, which will allow us to essentially double the speed that we cast Haunt at, or double the amount of Haunts that we get out there. And the more enemies affected by Haunt, the faster you're going to be able to nuke down things, especially like trash. It's not really going to come in super handy on a single Rift Guardian, but it definitely helps you clear mobs and good density. So I do prefer the Haunting Girdle myself. For the rings, we are using a Convention of Elements, and this item, it's just too good not to use on this build. There's not really anything else you can put here if you're really pushing high. If you're doing easier content, or maybe you don't have all of your gear just yet, you can swap this out for a Unity to be tougher. But when you really get to pushing high, you're probably going to need the Convention of Elements. And we only have 4 elements, so this is a cold build, so after poison, you can see there, 4 out of every 16 seconds, we are getting 200% increased damage. And with the resets that we're going to be getting on Soul Harvest, this will allow us to hit that a couple of times and do a lot of damage in just a short amount of time. And then our other ring is a Compass Rose. in conjunction with a Traveler's Pledge for the Endless Walk set. While moving, damage taken is reduced by up to 50%. Standing still, damage dealt is increased by up to 100%. So we're going to be taking advantage of the first part of that while we're kind of getting everything set up. We're casting Haunt, we're moving around, staying tough. And then I'll explain when we actually get into a Rift how I like to play this build and to kind of maximize your toughness and damage while you're getting everything set up. For actual legendary gems, we're using a Bane of the Trapped. We are using an Esoteric Alteration. Obviously for toughness, if you are tough enough, which in really high stuff you probably won't be, but if you want to and you're killing things fast enough, feel free to go with a Bane of the Powerful. Another option, it's not a very good option, but because you can cast Haunt at range, you can go with a Zay Stone of Vengeance, and it will also give you that second part, which has 20% chance to stun enemies on hit for 1 second. So it's an option, but it's not the greatest option since our biggest damage is coming from Soul Harvest. I just prefer the extra toughness from Esoteric. And if you're doing easier content or farming keys, Bane of the Powerful is definitely an option as well. And of course we're using a Bane of the Stricken. You can see the Bane of the Stricken I have on this guy is actually really low. That's because my other characters have my other gems right now, and I didn't move it over, so no big deal though. On to the skills. We're using Haunt. I am using Resentful Spirits in this build. A lot of people like to use Poison Spirit. This is a separate multiplier, and it allows enemies to take 20% more damage from your attacks. It's especially helpful on the Rift Guardian and elites if you don't have really good density. But because this is a cold build and we're using the Convention of Elements, I'm using Resentful Spirits because it's cold, and it releases 2 extra spirits now. So we're now releasing 4 spirits from Haunt, and that allows us to fill the screen with a lot of density really fast, and it allows us to keep doing damage in our cold roll. Now, of course, if you use Poison Spirit, you can be casting Spirit and doing a lot of damage with it here, and then kind of clean up the mess on your next roll, which is your cold roll, with your Soul Harvest. So it's really up to you. I would advise trying both of them and just see which one you like better. I've run this a lot in the past. Just for right now, I'm running Resentful Spirits. We're using Spirit Walk Jaunt. The only time you really run into mana issues is on the Rift Guardian, so you could use Honored Guest for that, but you are losing a second on here, and you do really notice that 1 second makes a big difference. Using Piranha's Piranado, this is going to allow enemies to take 15% more damage, and it's also going to be a nice grouping mechanism. Once you get on the Rift Guardian, you really only need to cast this once to get the damage amplification on there, and then it doesn't really drop off because of our Creeping Death, and it's a big mana hog, so try not to spam that on the Rift Guardian. Any other time though, you can spam it on a lot of mobs. Just be mindful of your mana. Locust Swarm, we're using Cloud of Insects. This allows affected enemies to deal 25% reduced damage. Again, we've already got the Pestilence rune, and Locust Swarm isn't really a damage dealer in this build, so we're going with Cloud of Insects for a little more of a utility build on it. You could do something like Disease Swarm to have do extra damage, or Locust Swarm or things like that. If you wanted some mana, you can use Devouring Swarm, but I find Cloud of Insects to be the best overall here. And we're using Horrify, Frightening Aspect. The fearing portion of this isn't really that helpful. I guess it kind of is. It's indirect toughness, but we're really using it for the Frightening Aspect rune. Gain 50% additional armor for 8 seconds after casting Horrify. So just, again, more toughness there. And then, of course, we're using Soul Harvest. We're using Languish. Increase your armor by 10% per harvested enemy. So that's going to be 100%, and reduce their movement speed by 80% per 5 seconds. So again, that's our big damage dealer. And yeah, we're using Languish for toughness. As for our passives, we're using Grave Injustice. So this build doesn't really require cooldown reduction very much. We're getting most of our cooldown reduction from here, unless you really want more cooldown reduction for the Rift Guardian and things like that. But gain 1% of your maximum life and mana. Reduce the cooldown of all your skills by 1 second when an enemy dies within 20 yards. And we're using Spirit Vessel, of course, to cheat death. Confidence Ritual to deal 25% additional damage to enemies within 20 yards. We're most of the time going to be within 20 yards. If you're using Zay's Stone of Vengeance, then you might be casting Haunt from a distance. And if you find yourself doing that a lot, you might switch this out for something. But generally, you're going to want to run Confidence Ritual, because most of the time you're going to be in melee range. And then, of course, we're using Creeping Death. Haunt, Locust Swarm, and Piranha's damage amplification lasts almost forever. And the actual numbers, let me check, it's 19,800 seconds now. And so that actually buffs the Jade Harvester build on how much it absorbs by quite a bit. By how many times you can use it, rather. Yeah, I'm having a hard time explaining that. But yeah, but it buffs this build up quite a bit. Let's just put it that way. For the cube, we are using the Furnace. We are using the, whatever this is, Quetzalcoatl? Sure. Locust Swarm and Haunt now deal their damage in half the normal duration. And then Ring of Emptiness, you deal 300% increased damage to enemies affected by both your Haunt and Locust Swarm. This is why we want to spread our Haunt and Locust Swarm to the entire screen as fast as we can. Now, Furnace will allow you to push the farthest, but this build does get a little more mana heavy. However, if you want to go with a Wormwood and be more of a lazy version, this is how I used to always play it, and it's definitely easier to play this way. But to get the most out of this build, you're going to want to run a Furnace. For Paragon points, maximum mana, because this build does kind of become mana heavy at times. Speed for getting around. Vitality if you need it. I don't really need it here. And then Intelligence. So yeah, maximum mana first, and then movement speed. Vitality only if you need it, and then Intelligence. Offense, critical hit chance, damage, attack speed, and cooldown reduction. Last, attack speed, because it does affect how fast we cast Haunt. So we can get Haunts out faster with more attack speed. Resist all, armor, life, and life regen. And life per hit, area damage, resource cost reduction, and gold find. And that is it on the build, guys. I guess we can go over our follower, the one I'm using real quick. She's using a Windseeker in conjunction with a Wayward, so she has a chance to stun. Although this Wayward is actually a really low roll, 35 is the highest. Using an S of Johan, so she can bunch up enemies for me. Of course, an Oculus Ring, 85% is the highest it goes, and then she cannot die. We're using Charm. We're using Missile Ward, buffs you and your chances, reducing damage from ranged attacks. You could just simply buff your armor and slow melee attacks if you like. Then we're using Erosion for more damage, and Focus Mine again for a little bit more damage. And that is all. We'll go ahead and jump into a Greater Rift 90, and yeah, we'll get into it, and hopefully we can you know, succeed. I've run a 90 pretty easily with this, so yeah, let's get going. Alright, let's see if we can do this. Some of you might notice the time change. This is actually, I did have to kind of stop the recording. First thing you want to do, somebody came to the door. I don't know what it is with people coming to the door when I'm recording. First thing you want to do is get your Locust Swarm up, and then you want to start casting Haunts. And then once you get a lot of those out, cast your now I've been thrown out of it now that I had to come back and do it again. Soul Harvest, yeah, cast your Soul Harvest to absorb everything. I like to cast a couple of Haunts before I cast my Spirit Walk and go in. So I'll try and demonstrate that right here. So pestilence, haunt, haunt, group, haunt, that, and then I come in, spam haunt, hit my fear, and then hit everything right when my spirit walk goes down. It resets the spirit walk. I can use it again, because when we're in spirit walk, we're not taking any damage. And there we go. And sometimes I do it out of order. The way I just explained it is the way I like to do it. That doesn't mean I'm always going to do it that way. And, come on. We're stuck on something over here. Try and stand in our Oculus ring for our cold roll here. Illusionists are kind of annoying on this build, but they're not too bad. We'll kind of draw them around here. There, we got them. Were we stuck or were they jailers? This Juggernaut could have been a jailer. Juggernauts can be kind of annoying on this build because they aren't affected by your Bane of the Trapped. Bane of the Trapped. But you can see we do still make decent work of them, especially if you're on your Oculus ring when your cold roll rolls around. I remember piranhas or Locust Swarm lasts for quite some time, so you don't need to be constantly casting it. But in a lot of high density, when things start to die and other things start to come in, I do like to go ahead and cast it again to make sure everything is affected by it. Just to make sure, because they have to be affected by both Haunt and Locust Swarm to benefit from your Ring of Emptiness. So I do like to cast Locust Swarm every now and then, just to make sure. And, oh, come on. There we go. Got a good hit. And these guys didn't seem to follow. Remember, Haunt still does nice little chunks of damage, especially because you can spam it one after another. So stand on your Oculus ring as often as you can, even if it's just for casting Haunt. Because it will do a lot of damage. Soul Harvest does the most damage, but again, you have to wait, so many seconds if you don't have really good density. And so in that sense, casting Haunt over and over and over means Haunt is going to do still a lot of damage. I don't want to say the same, but still you're missing out on a lot of damage if you're not casting Haunt constantly. Nice shield shrine. These guys are all bunched up, so we'll go ahead. And we'll just hit that a couple of times on our cold roll. We're stuck. Shielding, that's unfortunate for this build, especially if you get everything lined up perfectly. And then they go shielded. Don't actually need to use our Spirit Walk any unless you want movement when you've got a shield shrine. But our shield shrine is just about to drop. There we go. Remember, my gear is not optimized. It's not bad, but it's not optimized, and jumping right in and doing a 90 pretty easily. Like most builds nowadays, 90 is within the realm of possibility for pretty much anyone. And we got rid of most of our density, so we might not fight this guy. We'll see. He's not a juggernaut, so he is an annoying. I don't actually know if we got him with that soul harvest or not. And he was just in range to get with that. Good. This build definitely does, like a lot of build, it thrives in density. And this is not usually a good floor. But I guess it doesn't look too bad. This, the speed shrine is nice. It allows us to really spam haunt faster. Remember, cast your fear anywhere and everywhere you can, because we're just mainly using it for that that armor boost, that boost to toughness. There we go. Some of the things I've described might sound a little confusing in this build, but once you throw it together and start playing, you will understand exactly what I'm talking about. Ow, ow, ow. I really hate those guys. Mainly because, well, they're kind of annoying. They're very hateable. I do have a bad habit of using my spirit walk to get around, which is not bad. It's just not advised if you want to have something to allow you to get set up on big elite packs better. Wow, that was a crap floor. But it looks like we've got a good floor now, so... hopefully we're in range of this. Looks like we might have been. Yeah, this is a nice floor. Is this 2 elites or is this an illusionist? This is an illusionist. There we go. Just blow them all up. And your Locust Swarm will spread very, very far off the screen. I mean, not really far, but far enough where it will bring in other packs of whatnot. Oh boy. We do have our life saver cheat death thing, spirit vessel, but I don't want it to pop if it doesn't have to. Which it just did. Having a hard time around these vortex and all that good stuff. Let's get all these here. You can see it just spreads around the screen so fast. Let's go ahead and get this. And there's the Rift Guardian. This is going to help us out a little bit on the Rift Guardian. And this Guardian does have ads later, which is good for us. Again, keep spamming your haunt because it is doing a lot of damage. Don't worry about spamming your piranhas too much like I just did. Only when they summon in adds do you need to really worry about that. Here she goes. And we just got... saved. Oh, and we died. I thought we were going to get to pop that in time, but we didn't. Now, just because you get... you can... Oh, man, come on. You can keep your Soul Harvest stacks up. If you don't have a Rift Guardian with adds, then you want to be very careful of dying because you won't get to... You won't get to get back to 10 stacks. Try and group these up here. Whoops, I did not mean to do that. And I didn't mean to cast that Soul Harvest like that either. But that did a lot of damage on our Oculus Ring there. Of course, the more adds you get, the more resets you're going to get as well, which allows you to hit this more and more times. But there it is, guys, the Soul Harvest build. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Let me know what you think of the build. If you guys do anything different, if you do the same, if you're going to be playing this build, etc., etc. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, leave a like and a comment and subscribe if you want to see more. Thank you guys for watching. More good stuff to come. Take care.